Cool. Hey Nick, how you doing?
Hi there, Bruno. I'm good and you.
Good, good. So you'll see from my backdrop, I'm not where I normally am. I'm down in Bloom for a bit of business, and yeah, at least I get to sit outside today.
There we go. It's a bit of
Yeah,
business, bit of leisure. It's the way to do it,
yeah,
you know?
exactly. In fact, it's the only room they had available. So we were working in the other room that doesn't have any windows. So I'm actually kind of happy that they showed me here.
Yeah. You're
So,
one of the few lawyers that managed to get outside during the daytime. Lucky you.
yeah, exactly. Except to court, which no one wants to take a picture of.
Yeah.
Cool, but yeah. So let's get. I know that both you and I need to rush straight after this. So let's maybe get started. I've got the first question for you. It's kind of a long question. I'll make sure to share it with the person that asked it on one of the Facebook posts. But long story short, and I think we can even break it up into smaller components because there's a lot to it. But so this individual, a purchaser, bought a property. From the looks of it, they didn't look at the property or view the property, but then went quickly to the UK after that. So they live in the UK. They made they assigned a OTP, made an offer. Transfer hasn't taken place yet. So that's quite pertinent. So now the following has evolved since. They took occupation of the property, if I understand correctly. They've been paying occupational rent, and on taking occupation of the property, lo and behold, they find damage to the property. So this is your run-of-the-mill question. Oh, geez, yeah, now there's damage. What do I do? But now this is where it starts getting interesting, and certain variables could come from this. So there's damage to the property, and apparently when they viewed it, they didn't see this damage because there were carpets on top of it and that sort of thing, like the furniture and the like. So they didn't see it. And I think their issue now is like, sure, there's a lot of damage. Who's going to pay for it? But now throwing a span into the works, um, there were but agreements. So from the sounds of it, the offer was made without them having sight of a disclosure form that was in existence at the time the offer was made. And according to this form, the exact damage that they're worried about was actually disclosed. So the seller did actually, disclose it to them, or wanted. The intention was that the seller disclosed it. So the ultimate question here is, what do they do? Like, who do they have recourse against, and what would that recourse be?
Yeah. As you said, there's a lot. There's a lot in this question. There's a lot of different aspects and different areas to go, but I'll try to chunk it into little bits as easy as I can. The first thing is with regards to the property and the inspection. So what the listener sort of indicates is that they did have an opportunity to look at the property, but they didn't see any of the defects at the time that they were looking at the particular property. Okay. Now, this is one of those massively important things when you're looking at a particular property. Okay. And it comes down to law and the law expecting you to act reasonably in the circumstances. Okay. Remember, when you're looking at a property, the new mandatory disclosure forms come in, and there are certain things that they have to do. But when you're inspecting a property, the law's not expecting a seller to go and point out to you every little thing that's wrong with a particular property in massive detail. Okay. When you're inspecting a property, you're expected to take a reasonable standard of care and actually look at the property yourself to make sure you know what you are getting into. And that's why footnote clauses haven't gone completely, even if there are additional requirements with regards to the mandatory disclosure form that now comes in. So you're still going to have footnote clauses, and the properties are still going to be sold in the condition that they're in. So if you have an opportunity to inspect a particular premises, you must make sure that you look at that premises in detail. Make sure you look, this listener said under the carpets and behind all the furniture. Those are always where the damages are going to be. They're never going to be nice and plain, on the wall for you to see the minute you walk in. It's always going to be hidden away. you need to make sure that you're looking at those nooks and crannies just to make sure that there's nothing that's hidden away from you. If you do get
And I suppose the reality is it's not necessarily always intentionally hidden away. I mean, at the end of the day, the guy lives at the house. He doesn't want to walk into a hole in the floor, so he's obviously going to put something over it for his own like aesthetic, for aesthetic, like
Sure, 100%. And I think this listener had said, you know, there was damage to the skirting boards or something like that. You know, those are things that are not necessarily purposefully hid by a seller in the circumstances, but it is where damage is expected to occur. If you've got beds up against a skirting board, that's where the damage is going to happen. You know, so it's not it's not necessarily a purposeful hiding of these particular damages. And you as the purchaser in the circumstances must really, you know, show a degree of care to make sure that you look at these particular things, unless you can absolutely show that it was hidden in the circumstances. But if you've had the opportunity to look at the property, that's very difficult for the purposes of a court.
Sure.
So that's the one aspect here. That comes down to you know, a question of degree. Can you show that a seller was purposefully hiding a particular damage on a property? Is a very difficult question, and it comes down to, you know, the particular transaction and the particular conduct of the parties in the circumstances. I think for my money, just having read the question at a very high level without delving into the actual facts, it doesn't seem to me like this is something that's going to necessarily make the sale agreement void. Or something that's the sale agreement can be set aside on. It seems like damages which could be expected in the circumstances, but it again depends on the facts. The far more interesting thing with regards to this particular question is the mandatory disclosure form. Okay, so what the purchaser said is that they obviously signed the OTP. They did it while they were still overseas, and there was no mandatory disclosure form which was now attached to that OTP. Okay, now the reason that this mandatory disclosure form has been brought in is for circumstances like this, and there are consequences as a result of the non-attachment of the mandatory disclosure form. Specifically in the circumstances, the damages that were apparent at the property were disclosed in terms of the non-disclosure form. So it seems to me that there's no attempt by the seller in the circumstances to hide or try and misrepresent the damages which are on the premises. It seems that they were happy to disclose it. But the agent's job is to make sure that that mandatory disclosure form was attached to the OTP at the time of sending. And that, our listener tells us, was not done. The mandatory disclosure form was only received a number of months later after the signature of the OTP. And as a result of that, it seems to me that there's obviously a consequence for the agent in the circumstances specifically. Obviously, the commission is now in question, whether they would be entitled to commission in the circumstances. That is the consequence of obviously not attaching the mandatory disclosure form. And then obviously the far harsher punishment is there might be some level of personal liability on behalf of the agent in the circumstances. That again falls under a question of it depends. But certainly in the circumstances, I don't think this is an agreement which can be set aside on the basis that there are damages which were not disclosed to the purchaser. But there are certainly consequences, I think, for the agent in the circumstances for not having complied and attached the mandatory disclosure form to the OTP.
Sure. No, I totally agree with you. So, I mean, long answer short, you're going to need to approach someone and get help with it. I don't think that any one of these parties will just voluntarily just, accede to whatever the purchaser is going to ask for. So there might be a bit of research and arm twisting to try and get a result that's favorable.
Sure, 100%.